Hi, good afternoon. I'm Valerie Milano. I'm the senior editor of the Hollywood Times, and I'm so happy that we have Judy Irving here, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Judy Irving, and I produced and directed a film called The Wild Parrots of Telegraph Hill, which is having its gala re-release right now in New York and Los Angeles.
Lovely. Thank you again for taking the time with the Hollywood Times. It's a beautiful film about a truly beautiful story. It's a love story, say about a boy and his birds with a twist. Mark isn't a boy, um, and the birds were never really his, but he loved them and they loved him. It's so powerful. And I'm not ashamed to say that I cried watching it. How did you come to make this film 20 odd years ago?
Well, I had been getting interested in birds again in my late 40s, early 50s after I sort of lost interest in boys. And
Yes.
I had made a couple of short films about birds. And some friends said, hey, you should make a movie about this guy who feeds the parrots. So after the second friend recommended that I do that, I finally called up Mark Bittner, and went over there and saw this amazing scene on the Greenwich steps on Telegraph Hill with all these colorful parrots and this guy who seemed to know them all and had named them and could tell stories about them. So I thought, hey, this could make a good film. That's how it started.
Great. This remastering takes us back to a time and place most of us will never see again. But for those who lived it, it's a never ending story, right?
Right, right. And the birds are still in San Francisco. The wild parrot flock is doing very well. They've adapted to the urban environment like a lot of wild parrot flocks in the Los Angeles area. And they're here and they squawk and they fly wherever they want and they produce joy. I mean, some people who stay up late at night and don't want to wake up early are sort of annoyed by the noise, but everybody basically loves them and they're here. They're part of the culture now. In fact, they are the official animal of San Francisco. We've just won a contest that was sponsored by the San Francisco Chronicle. Um, and we beat the sea lions of Pier 39.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. I love that.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'll have to tell my son that. He lives in San Francisco. That's great. Um, it's so much emotional investment was made back then in telling this beautiful story. How hard was it for you and Mark to revisit the story?
Um, well, if you mean during the restoration of the film, or yeah, um, it it wasn't hard at all, actually. What prompted the restoration was that these streaming platforms had started to drop standard definition movies from their palette. And I didn't want The Wild Parrots of Telegraph Hill to fall through the cracks and basically disappear. So I knew that because it had been shot on film and it was standard def, meaning 4:3 framing, uh, it had been shot originally on 16 millimeter and then blown up to 35 for its initial release to 500 theaters. But we needed to restore it to 4K ultra high definition in order to make it available again. So that was the impetus. And we both wanted to do it. It took a really long time to do the restoration because it's painstaking work, but we were assisted by the Academy Film Archive, which was fantastic. They donated the 4K scan. And actually, I'm going to be doing Q&A with the preservation officer from the Academy Film Archive at the NoHo on the 29th and at the Royal on the 30th. He's going to moderate it. So it's done, it's out there, it's beautiful, it's vibrant. The colors are so rich because it was originally shot on film, and I'm calling it the sort of the director's framing, because it's when it was blown up to 35, we lost a third of the frame, either at the top or the bottom, because of the blow up, the way films are blown up. And so now this is the original framing, so you're going to see the whole thing.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. The cinematography is amazing and the remastering, I'm sure, made the original film pop. Um, can you talk more about the remastering, how it was done?
Yeah. The Academy Film Archive donated this scan of, basically they scanned photographically in 4K every single frame of the 16 millimeter negative that was in the movie. That's 119,500 frames. And then, because the negative had picked up dust and had some other imperfections in it to begin with, maybe from the camera or maybe from the lab work, whatever, we as volunteers basically worked for 5.5 years part-time, cleaning up every one of those frames to get rid of the dust, to get rid of the hairs in the gate, to get rid of all the imperfections. So it has, it has really never looked better, in my opinion. So you got to come see it.
And the soundtrack is timeless, from Kerouac recordings to the original music by the late Chris Mitchie. The music is a fitting memorial to the composer. How was that musical score originally conceived?
Yes, that was an interesting story. I had been using some temp music. Filmmakers, when they're editing, they often use temporary music before they can actually get something of their own composed. And so I had been using some temp music by Van Morrison that Mark had recommended. And by chance, we met the guitarist for Van Morrison, Chris Mickey, at a birthday party for a mutual friend of ours. And we talked to him about getting in touch with Van Morrison to get the rights, maybe get the rights to that. And he said, "Oh, you don't have to contact Van. I can do that. I can do that stuff that easily." And so he did. He had ultimately the soundtrack, the music soundtrack has, I believe it's 5 pieces that he had already recorded for a CD that were fantastic. And then he composed 7 more pieces for the movie. And he wanted to donate this soundtrack to the film. He wanted to sort of go out in a big way, because unbeknownst to us at the beginning of this process, he had melanoma, and he was dying of melanoma. So this was his last big project, and he was very proud of it, and so are we.
Yeah, definitely. And talk about visiting the flock now. Do you?
Yes, yes, we live on Telegraph Hill, right next door to the cottage where Mark used to live. And we're actually taking care of 2 birds from the flock who can't fly right inside the house. They're sort of the family members. But the wild flock flies around the hill a lot too, so we hear them and see them. And basically, when tourists ask me, how do I how do I see the birds? Where can I see the parrots? The best bet is to go to Ferry Park near the ferry building around dusk. And a lot of the parrots fly into Ferry Park and fool around and squawk and hang upside down and do this fabulous display of craziness before they settle down for the night, and they sleep in the tall poplars at what's now called Sue Bierman Park. So if you're coming up to San Francisco, just go to Sue Bierman Park at dusk, and you can almost for sure see the parrots.
Love that. Love it. Love it. Love it. Great film, and thank you so much for sharing it with us all. What are you working on next?
Well, actually, I just finished a film called, it's another feature documentary, and it's called Cold Refuge. It's about how swimming in open, cold water, namely San Francisco Bay and the ocean, mitigate serious life challenges. Some of my characters are, one of them is a blind swimmer who swims tethered to a sighted swimmer. Another is in a wheelchair, and I was able to film him swimming from Alcatraz using only his arms. There's a lawyer who's under intense stress, who is kind of a representative of all of us who are under too much stress and try to do too much. And there's an African American swimmer who was discriminated against when he was 13. He was told by a white swimmer, "Oh, hey, black people don't swim." And it took him 30 years to try. So this is called Cold Refuge. It's another feature, and it's just being released theatrically as well. So it's the first time that I've ever had two documentaries in the theaters at the same time, and that's really fun.
Good for you. Well, how can we find you? How can our readers and our viewers find you in these films? Talk about that for a second.
Well, the best way to be up to date with the Wild Parrots of Telegraph Hill as the bookings are made, it's in New York now. It's playing again next weekend, and it's going to open in Los Angeles on the 29th. And after that, it's going to San Francisco, and then there will be many more theatrical bookings by Shadow Distribution. So you can go to the Shadow Distribution website, or you can go to markbittner.net. That's Mark's own website. He's going to be listing all the screenings as they come up as well. And then you can go to my nonprofit's website called pelicanmedia.org to find out about Cold Refuge and Parrots.
Beautiful. That's great. Well, we're the Hollywood Times today, and we will be promoting your film, and our YouTube channel is the Hollywood Times Official. So we'll be sending you and the publicist our written report here, and it'll include part of this video. And again, Judy, thank you again for all the creativity that you have in your bloodstream, and appreciate you and Mark and the film, and look forward to seeing your next one. And please keep in touch with us.
Okay, will do. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.